Hello, Rob.
Hey, Maribel.
How are you?
Doing well. Kevin, it's all yours, my friend.
Hello, hello. Good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Very glad to be here and want to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Thank you guys all for joining. I'm certainly glad I'm here, and I'm certainly glad to have everyone come and join and learn a little bit more about the big book and share some of what I've learned over the years, what I've been taught and what I've continued to teach with my sponsees, and the hope being, of course, that you will begin to share these things with your sponsees over time. So, as we always do, let's start with the set-aside prayer, which goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, we always like to read the two passages in the book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, which incidentally is my favorite page in the big book, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. All right, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of tradition and the custom here at the fourth dimension big book study, would everyone who has their video on please put one hand up like this? And everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. Oh, that's the best. I never, ever get tired of that. All right, guys. So we're going to be in step 4. We got a lot of work to do tonight in column 4 in particular. I'm glad to be back. I'm back in Calgary now. I've got my whiteboard. I don't know that you guys can see it the best. I'm still kind of working out the audio visual in this new place that I moved to. I'm going to turn on that light. I don't know if that helps at all. Hopefully it does. Now we got a big glare on there as well. But in any event, guys, I'm going to use this because it's the best way to help kind of sort it all out. So first of all, guys, why are we doing a step 4? I think it's always good to remember, why are we doing a step 4? Why are we doing a step 5? Why are we doing this stuff that, Bill Wilson refers to step 5 in the 12 and 12 as a painful and pointless piece of surgery is what it seems like, what it looks like at first. So why are we doing this? And the reality of why we're doing this, we can read about several different places in our book, but fundamentally, the reason is because we come to AA and we're broken and we're powerless and our life is unmanageable. We come to understand, we come to believe that there is a new power, okay, that can come into our lives, that can solve our problem. We make a decision that we want to get connected to this power. We make a decision in step 3 that we want to have this spiritual awakening. But that doesn't mean that the spiritual awakening has happened. Okay? Like I always say, if I make a decision that I'm going to Las Vegas, does that mean I'm in Las Vegas? Absolutely not. I got a long way to go before I'm going to get to Las Vegas. Okay? Just making that decision is not enough. Although what our book says is that though this was only a beginning, though, if honestly and humbly made, an effect was sometimes a very great one was felt at once. It's only a beginning. Okay, it's only a beginning, and we need to get connected to this power. And the problem and the paradox that every alcoholic like myself faced at step 3 is that I know I need this power. My life depends on getting connected to this power. My sobriety depends on me getting connected to this power, but few people are more cut off from that power than an alcoholic like myself, filled with selfishness and self-centeredness and resentment and dishonesty and self-pity and all of those things, man. There's too much of me within me cutting me off from God. Okay. And what our book says is, though our decision in step 3 was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves that had been blocking us. The things in myself that had been blocking me from what? Blocking me from God, blocking me from getting connected to this power, blocking me from what Bill Wilson calls the sunlight of the Spirit. And so that's the point. That's why we're going to do this work in step 4 right now. Okay. Now, our book says that we look at the 3 common manifestations of self in a step 4. And those 3 common manifestations of self that we're going to look at are resentment, number 1, fear, number 2, and our sex conduct, number 3. Okay. I want to get everyone just aligned that right now we are still on the first common manifestation of self. We are just looking at resentments right now. Okay. That's all that we're doing. And it's taken some time. As you guys know, this is our 3rd week going through this. Okay. And so we're gonna kind of help to hopefully dispel some of the myths, some of the rumors about step 4, some of the misunderstandings. And brothers and sisters, let me tell you, I had a lot of misunderstandings about step 4. I was very confused about step 4. There was a lot of things that I thought I knew for sure that just were not so. And I went in and out of AA for 5 years and couldn't get sober. But if you would have asked me, if I would have went to a 3-topic discussion meeting, you said, Kevin, tell us all about step 4, man, I could have taken you all hostage for an hour telling you what I thought about step 4. I had no actual experience with the actual step 4. I'd never really done it. Okay. So what we want to do today, guys, is I really want to help just connect some of the dots, fill in some of the blanks, and try to make it as simple as possible for us to do a step 4, but an actual genuine step 4 as it's written in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. As I have been taught. Okay. As I've been taught. And I've been teaching this big book study for about 15 years now, believe it or not. And I've taught many people what I'm going to teach tonight. And I think it works for sure. And I've got sponsees on this call right now who've been sober for years that will testify to the fact that this works. Okay. So you know what, guys, and I forgot about something. Before we continue in this, I need to make an amend to y'all. I need to make an amend. Okay. Because I lied to all of you last week. As some of you will recall, some of you will remember, I was late last week. Raise your hand if you remember that I was about 15 minutes late last week. Yeah, I was late, okay? So after work that day in Houston, I took a nap. I went to sleep, okay? And my alarm went off and I must have hit snooze. And anyway, at 15 minutes into the meeting, I was still sound asleep. And I woke up freaking out and got on the call as quickly as I could. And my sponsee, Brad, had said, Kevin, are you having technical difficulties? And I said, yeah, yes, I am. Yes, Brad, that's a great idea. And the reality was I was terribly ashamed. And I overreacted, and I was very devastated, to tell the truth, that I had fallen asleep while you fine people were sitting online waiting for me while I was still asleep. And so I told a lie. And I said, yeah, technical difficulties. And right then, as the words were coming out of my mouth, I knew, like, uh-oh, I'm going to have to make amends for this. And here we are, guys. So one of the things I've been taught in life, and I believe this, is if I tell a lie, I have to go back and correct it. I have to go back to the people or the person that I lied to and make that amend. And I know we're not on step 9 right now, but I needed to clear that up as soon as I could. I did not have technical difficulties. I was sound asleep. I don't know, my alarm didn't go off. And anyway, I'm a human being. I'm human, and I made that mistake, and I was just embarrassed, really, is what it was. And I was full of fear of what y'all would think of, like, oh yeah, teacher of the big book study, sound asleep. Yeah, nice. Okay, so anyway, that's it. I just wanted to make that amend. I love you guys. Thank you for your forgiving spirit. I heard a great thing about forgiveness too, and I'll share it with you guys. That I don't forgive myself. I God forgives me, and then I accept God's forgiveness. I really like that. I really like that a lot. So anyway, so now back to step 4. Last week, okay, so we can see here, column 1 in our step 4 is who? Who are we angry at? We listed people, principles, or institutions with whom we are angry. Column 2, we asked ourselves why we are angry. Okay. So you guys remember we have the resentment prompt sheet, step 4 resentment prompt sheet that'll kind of indicate different resentments that we might have. But I just let resentments come to mind and I just write them down as they come. 1 resentment per page. Okay. Then I move into column 2. Now remember, guys, we said if you go to page 65 and you look at page 65 in these examples that Bill Wilson is writing, the most number of words that he ever uses to describe why he is resentful is 19 words in that first one for Mr. Brown. There's 19 words there. These are quick bullet points. I'm not writing the ongoing saga of, the 3-part miniseries of Kevin's life. And somebody else mentioned to me, and I really like this, what I'll try and do when I'm writing in there is try to get my sponsor on my side to see, like, you see how terrible this person is, what they did, and I'll try to like manipulate my sponsor into seeing that this person they're clearly in the wrong. This isn't me. So no, we're not doing that. It's quick bullet points. They lied to me. They stole from me. They got me fired. Whatever it is, quick little bullet points. Okay. Then we talked about column 3. Column 3 is affects my. And for affects my, we look at page 65 at the top. It says on our grudge list, we said opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sexual relations which had been interfered with? Okay. So all I do is look at each resentment and write down, okay, did this impact my self-esteem? Yes or no? Okay. Now it's talking about security. You'll recall we talk about 3 different types of security. Physical security. So this resentment that I have to this person, did they put my physical life in danger from what they did? Okay. Number 1. Number 2, my emotional security, which is my feelings. Did this resentment hurt my feelings? Okay. And then number 3, financial security. Okay. This resentment that I have and what they did it impact my financial well-being, my financial security? So when it says security there, make a little note. There's 3 kinds we're looking at: physical, emotional, and financial security. My ambition, my desire to go out into the world and do good things, was it my personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? Okay. Now let's do a little refresh on last week. So I didn't have this whiteboard with me last week. So what I want you guys to see, what I do is I just make a little dotted line here when I'm drawing this out for sponsees on what we do. Okay, just a little dotted line, because what we're really doing now, right now, is not column 3 and it's not column 4 yet. This is something that we do between column 3 and column 4, and that is pray. We say our prayer, okay? We pray, and the prayers that we have for step 4 are on page 67 and page 552, okay? And Brad is not here tonight to read for us. Vincent, would you like to be our reader tonight?
Yes, absolutely, Kevin.
All right, my man, I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go now to let's go to the bottom of page 66, okay? So I want you to read that paragraph for us. From the bottom of 66, please, Vincent, and then the top of page 67, just that paragraph.
Thanks, Kevin. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you right there, Vincent. You guys will remember last week, and I think this is really important. It was very important for me, and so I want to share it with you. What the book says is that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, okay? A long time ago, I heard from a great spiritual master who he happened to be a Buddhist, but he talked about the people who wronged us are suffering. They're suffering, and they may not even want to harm us. Their suffering is spilling out of themselves and causing me to suffer, and that I am not even the first victim of their suffering. They are the first victim of their own suffering. And when I start to look at these people who wronged me as sick, and I always put that note there, and I'll recommend you do the same, put a note that they are suffering. They are suffering. Their suffering is spilling out of them and causing me to suffer. I am not even the first victim of their suffering. They are the first victim of their own suffering. And when I start to see them that way, when I really try to practice looking at them that way, I will begin to feel a measure of understanding and love and compassion for them when I practice that tool. Okay, when I use that tool, it's a spiritual tool. When we talk about, we had a spiritual toolkit laid at our feet. This is one of the tools that I have in my toolbox when I am angry with someone, to understand that they are sick and suffering. Sick, though, I'll tell you what I did with that word sick is I just used it. I just got into judgment, like, oh, he's just a sick SOB. That's his problem. Okay. Not a lot of love and understanding in that. Okay. But when I started to understand that the people who I believed harmed me were suffering, and I could begin to have some level of compassion for that, the way that I looked at these people began to change, and that resentment, the intensity of the resentment, began to dissipate. Doesn't change what happened. And none of what we're going to do tonight in this prayer or in column 4, none of it changes everything, other than it changes my perception of the situation. My grand sponsor Clancy would always say that alcoholism is a disease of perception. I see the world, but I see it very poorly, and I do not see it accurately, okay? And when I can begin to have some level of compassion through this prayer, page 67, I begin to understand, and it changes the way that I look at it. And when I change the way that I look at things, the things that I look at change, okay? So with that said, Vincent, would you please read the prayer at the top of page 67? And I want everyone to know, 3 lines down there, it says, we ask God. And anywhere in the big book where it says, we ask God, that is a prayer. And so from that point down to the end of the paragraph, that is what we call the step 4 anger prayer. Okay. So Vincent's going to read it for us, and we're going to talk about it again just very quickly. We'll go through it, and then we'll get into column 4.
Thanks, Kevin. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us, show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done.
Amen. All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Vincent. So notice, guys, when it says, though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, what I want you to understand is when they say the symptoms, we're talking about column 2, though we did not like the symptoms, what they did, the symptoms, and column 3, the way they disturbed me, the way that they affected me, they, like ourselves, were sick and suffering too. So now we've got the prayer, okay? And what I counsel my sponsees to do when we do their step 5, they're going to have, probably 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 individual resentments. And I will ask them to say this prayer at least one time for every person on the list. And you'll know that we have talked in this big book study about how we have a lot of nickel and dime resentments, but we also have some $100 bill resentments, right? And I always see nodding heads. Everybody knows what a $100 bill resentment is, okay? We've all got them. They're the ones that are most valuable to us. Those are the ones we love, and we wake up and we polish them and we take care of them, and we've rocked them like babies our whole life. These $100 bills, you know, these $100 resentments that we have. Oh, we love them. Okay. The nickel and dime resentments, the dollar resentments, they're going to disappear right away. Most of the time we're going to put light on them, and we're going to see that they didn't even really exist. Some of them really do exist. Okay. Our book says the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. I understand there were people in my life who really harmed me. They wanted to harm me, they intended to harm me, and they were successful in that enterprise. They hurt me. I know that there are people who hurt you. I know that. I understand that, and I'm willing to meet you halfway on that and say, what they did was terrible. I get it. However, unfortunately, those justifiable resentments are even more deadly than the fantasies, okay? Because they are justifiable. In any event, I have to find a way to be free of them. This prayer, in my experience, works. It works very, very well in terms of cleaning up and beginning to feel some level of freedom for these resentments, okay? And I had to pray for people that harmed me. And it was not easy. And they did not go away after 1 or 2 times of saying it. Okay. And I had to continue to use this tool. And we're going to read page 552 in a minute. It'll give us another direction on how long we ought to pray for. So it says, I would say column 1 was a friend of mine named Mike that I was resentful at. God, please help me to show Mike the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Mike is a sick and suffering man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Okay, that's the prayer that I would say for Mike. Then I would go on to the next one. Okay, and just by the simple act of saying prayers for these people, oftentimes it's enough understanding and compassion to clean up a lot of the anger that is so intense with us. Alcoholics have a special brand of anger. We have a pure, crystalline, uncut Colombian version of anger. Okay, we don't do anger normally. Like anything, we go to extremes. And when I felt anger, I was extremely angry. And sometimes I would drive anger like a fast car into a brick wall. Oftentimes, anger for me was just like an old mule stuck in the mud, just refusing to change or do anything. They're wrong, and that's it. And that simple prayer began to loosen that up a little, loosen it up enough that I was able to start looking at things in a new way in column 4. Yeah. The short form of the step 4 anger prayer. Okay. We can't always remember the whole thing. The short form of the step 4 anger prayer. God, save me from being angry. God, save me from being angry. God, save, and over and over and over, saying it over and over. Sometimes if I apply that tool, it will work. And I'll be honest, guys, I don't always apply the tool. I don't always. Sometimes the anger takes over before I have a chance to apply the tool, and I go off and I do a bunch of things and say a bunch of things and all that stuff. But it's a lot better than it certainly was. I remember when I was new in AA, I had this guy come up to me one time, and he said, you know, and I was like 20 at the time. He's like, I can tell you have severe anger problems. He's like, I've got a book for you that I want you to read. It was not the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was this little anger management book that had these like little elves. These little elves were like learning how to like not be angry with one another. And this guy gives me this book in the middle of an AA meeting. This old man, he's like, I can tell you got real problems with anger, kid. Here's a little book. And like these little elves, I told him where he could shove those little elves, you know. How dare you say I've got an anger problem? I don't have an anger, you got an anger problem. These stupid book, don't give me, you know. Yeah, I had severe anger problems. Okay, but it didn't come from reading a book or anger management or reading it you know, about these elves or whatever it was. Okay, it came from this prayer and then starting to look at these things in a new way. And Let's read page 552 now, Vincent, if you would be so kind. This is kind of a supplement to what we just read, and I think it's a beautiful thought and a beautiful part of the prayer that we say. Whenever you're ready, Vincent.
I'm just getting there, and I'll just start
Good.
at the or the top.
Let's he said in effect, let's start
Okay.
there. And just to set the stage here, long story short, this is a woman, alcoholic woman, sober for a little while in AA. She had done most of her step 4. She had really focused on column 4. Most of her resentments disappeared right away, but one resentment she couldn't get over. And it was a resentment towards her mother, and it was killing her, and she knew it. One day she sees a magazine headline, and it says how to deal with resentments, written by a priest or a minister, what have you. And this is what he said. He said, in effect,
If you have a resentment you want to be free of, if you will pray for the person or thing that you resent, you will be free. If you will ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given to them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. Even when you don't really want it for them and your prayers are only words and you don't mean it, go ahead and do it anyway. Do it every day for 2 weeks, and you will find you have come to mean it and to want it for them. And you will realize that where you used to feel bitterness and resentment and hatred, you now feel compassionate, understanding, and love.
beautiful. That's it, man. That's the magic. Okay. And really, this ethic is not unusual to a lot of different religions. You know, our book says to be quick to point out where other religions are right. Alcoholics Anonymous is certainly not a religious denomination. Okay. But a lot of different religions have this ethic of praying for your enemies. Pray for your enemies. Okay. And see what happens. And this is what happens. And believe me, the people in column 1 of my step 4, they were my enemies. Okay. They were definitely my enemies. And saying this prayer helped a great deal. And so that's what I'll do. Okay. So say column 1 was Mike, or on page 65, we got Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, whoever it is. God, please help me to show Mike the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. This is a sick and suffering man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Please, God, grant him health, wellness, prosperity, and God, may they have everything for themselves that I want for myself. And that's it. That's the prayer. That's what we say. And I say that one time for every person on the step 4. And then for the ones that still stick around, and there are many, those $100 bill resentments, they stick around. We want to continue to pray. It says every day for 2 weeks. Every day for 2 weeks. Okay, we say this prayer. And what's funny is the first time I read it, it said, ask for their health, their prosperity, their well-being, and so on. I said, well, fine, I'll just say it. I won't even mean it. Fine. And then it said, even if you don't mean it and your prayers are words, go ahead and do it anyway. And I was like, whoa, like, how did they know? They know because this book is written by alcoholics, and they know how we are. They know how we think. Okay. First 100 members of AA wrote this book, and they know exactly the way the alcoholic mind thinks. Okay. So every day for 2 weeks. Now, you guys will remember last week we did a meditation here. Okay. At this same point, it was something that I was taught, something that I continue to teach, something that I continue to think is a very effective tool. And that is what we call the hospital meditation. Okay. Now we're not going to do it today. We did it last week. We spent some time on it. Long story short, what I want to do is picture in my mind's eye a hospital that I know very well. And I want to imagine that I'm going into that hospital and I'm going to visit in the hospital the person that I resent. Okay. And that may be hard to do, especially if there is trauma or abuse around that person. I understand. I get it. Okay. I am a survivor of childhood abuse. Okay. Most of us are. I thought I was totally alone in that. I want you to know probably almost everyone on this call has experienced some level of trauma and abuse, victimization, whatever it is. So doing that hospital meditation and saying, I'm going to go visit this person in the hospital. If it's early days and you're still just trying to stay sober, you know, one day at a time right now, you just keep doing your deal. You just keep talking to your sponsor, going to meetings, trying to be of service. That's great. But over time, some of us have found it very helpful to do this hospital meditation. And of course, what I'm doing is going into the hospital to visit this person. And it's the logical extension of me thinking of them as a sick and suffering person. I'm thinking of them in the hospital on their deathbed, in chronic mortal pain, emaciated, dying. And then think about in that moment, how would I feel for them in that moment? They're no longer this powerful person that did this dastardly thing to me. They are now a truly sick and suffering person. And how would I feel for them in that moment? And you guys don't remember what we do. We go into the hospital, we go to the gift shop. I think, what am I going to get for them in the gift shop? We grab whatever, you know, it might be a bottle of water or magazine or chocolate bar. I take it up to them. And then the key is to think about what act of service would I consider doing for them in that moment? Okay. Is it like making them more comfortable in their bed, opening the drapes so the sunshine can come in? One sponsee of mine was doing this for people that he had been horribly sexually abused by, and what was meaningful for him. So I always share it. You know, when we're sick in the hospital, our mouths get very dry, and imagining taking some ice chips in one of those little plastic cups and just gently helping to moisten his lips. That's what worked for him. That was meaningful for him. Okay. Might be just opening the blinds or adjusting the pillow, helping them somehow. Okay. And then opening our eyes, like, we're not actually in the hospital. We're not actually doing this, right? What I'm trying to do is cultivate within myself this sense of compassion for these resentments that I've held on to my whole life, these resentments that I got drunk behind for years. And we're going to talk about that right now. Okay. If you ever gotten drunk at someone, okay, I want to tell you, there's only one category of human beings on earth who get drunk at people, and that is alcoholics. Okay, and this is where it happens in column 4. These are the people that I get drunk at, and now we're going to find a new solution other than just getting drunk at them. Okay, so now page 67, it says, referring to our list again. Okay, it's pretty clear cut. Like they're pretty clear. Like, you know, it says we turn back to the list. First of all, the bottom of 66, we turn back to the list. Okay, so we look, now we pray, now we go, and now it says, referring to our list again. This is where column 4 begins. Step 4, column 4. I will recommend you make a little note there so that when you are sponsoring newcomers down the road, you know where step 4, column 4 begins. And it's right here, referring to our list again. Vincent, would you be kind enough again to read that for us, please?
Yes. We're just a bit above there, aren't we? We're just at
that's okay. That's okay. We're just gonna skip down there. We're gonna skip down to referring to our list again because we're on column 4 right now.
Absolutely. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight.
All right. Thank you. That's good. That's good. Very good, Vincent. Thank you so much. Guys, I am so pumped to be sharing this with you. I think for myself that what we are going to learn right now is one of the most pivotal points in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think that this is one of the most important things that we ever learn in AA. And I don't think I'm alone in that. As I said, my grand sponsor said this is a disease of perception. I need to change my perception. Okay. How did we used to change our perception? As Clancy would say, drinking. Okay. Drinking changes our perception of the world instantly. Okay. I needed to find a new way to change my perception. My great-grand sponsor, a man named Chuck Chamberlain, he believed in this so much, he actually wrote a book. That book is called A New Pair of Glasses. Okay. A New Pair of Glasses. And it's really kind of his memoirs and his thoughts about AA. And think about this. He could have named that book anything. He could have named that book anything he wanted. And he chose to name that book A New Pair of Glasses. And it has become an AA classic. I don't believe A New Pair of Glasses is conference approved. I don't think it's approved by the conference, but it is sold in almost every AA bookshop you're going to go to. It's a classic, okay? And he named it A New Pair of Glasses. Why? Because he believes, as I believe, this is one of the most important changes of perception that we're going to have, okay? So I'm going to come over here and write some stuff out. So, column 4. Where am I to blame? Column 4. Okay, where am I to blame? Can you guys see this whiteboard okay? Is it okay? So I can move it forward if that helps. I don't know if that helps at all, but
Does everybody know how to pin?
Rob, you want to give him a crash course on how to pin it?
Yeah, if you go to Kevin's picture, and to the right-hand side of Kevin, there's 3 little dots. And if you click on that, okay, your drop down will happen, and pin is one of the options. And what that'll do is that'll bring Kevin into the middle of the screen a lot bigger, so you can read his board.
Okay.
That also can be done by going up to the view and putting it for the speaker. It'll put him, just him.
Yeah, great. Good. Thank you. So where am I to blame? And there are 3 places. And even if you can't see the whiteboard, you'll understand. There's not a lot to write here. But so where am I to blame? And there's 3 places, guys, that I'm going to look. Okay. 3 places. And we're going to go through them one at a time. The first one, where am I to blame when I look in the past? When I look in the past, where am I to blame? And to do that, we're going to look at page 62. Okay? And I'll take you through that in a moment. We're going to look at page 62 and we're going to understand how looking in the past will help me to change my resentment towards this situation. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? And I'll explain to you in a moment what I mean by that. And number 3, where am I to blame in this resentment today? Okay, so please make a note of this, guys. And we're going to go through each one of these right now, okay, in order. So we're going to talk about first, where am I to blame when I look in the past? Where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? And where am I to blame today? Okay? So let's go to page 65 right now. Let's look at some of Bill Wilson's resentments. And then let's apply each one of these and see where would we be to blame? Where are we to blame in terms of these resentments? Okay, and it'll start to make sense. And then I'll start to use some more real world examples. Okay, so on page 65, I'm resentful towards Mr. Brown. Okay, why am I resentful? His attention to my wife, told my wife of my mistress, Brown may get my job at the office. Okay, those are why we're resentful. That's column 2. Column 3, it affects his sex relations, self-esteem, fear, sex relations, self-esteem, fear, security, self-esteem, fear, personal relationships. Okay. So now let's go to page 62. Page 62, where it says selfishness, self-centeredness. Okay. And when we went through that the first time, we may have even made a note, step 4, column 4. Okay. Selfishness, self-centeredness. Vincent, do you want to read this paragraph for us, please?
Yes, absolutely. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt.
Beautiful. That is absolute poetry. When I hear that, it's like listening to Mozart. Okay. Because that piece of our book, I didn't realize how connected that was to step 4. I didn't realize. Okay. I knew about step 4. You hear about step 4 around discussion meetings in AA, and I was around and around AA trying to stay sober, dying an inch a day slowly until eventually I would just drink again. And what I would hear about step 4 is, well, column 4, it's, what's my part? What's my part in the situation? What's my part? That's what you typically hear. Not where am I to blame? It's what's my part? What's my part in that resentment? And what I thought that meant is this person did this thing to me. Here's how it impacted me. And here's how I reacted to what they did. That's my part, right? Wrong. Totally 100% wrong. And when somebody finally took me through this work and took me into this book, they pointed out that what we're looking at, what we're looking for is what is my part? Where am I to blame in the past that put me in a position to be hurt by this person? Okay. It says, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. What I want everyone to understand is that their retaliation for me stepping on their toes is whatever I've written in column 2. I've made decisions based on self in the past that put me in a position to be hurt. And that position to be hurt and the hurt that they caused me is whatever I've written in column 2. Okay, you guys with me on that? Does that make sense? Now it says seemingly without provocation. And I love to think that it's unprovoked. I love to think I was standing there minding my own business, and this person came up and put the whammy on me for no reason. Isn't that the national anthem of every person sitting in an AA treatment center somewhere? Okay. This person came up and did this to me. Okay. And rarely, if ever, do we take a look at what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position. It is an entirely new way of looking at the resentments. So now, guys, with that understanding, and if I was going to pick like one paragraph in the book, one paragraph that encapsulates the most essential element of Alcoholics Anonymous in general, it would be that paragraph. The selfishness and self-centeredness, that's the root of my trouble. We're going to come back to that when we get to step 6 and 7. We made decisions based on self that later placed me in a position to be hurt. Okay. Now let's go back to page 65. So remember, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. Why? Well, his attention to my wife. He told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. Okay. Now, looking at it with our new pair of glasses that we got on page 62, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position to get hurt by Mr. Brown? Anybody want to raise your hand if you have an idea, something that you want to share? Just raise your hand. Anybody? Take a look. Read through it and think, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position to be hurt by Mr. Brown? Charlotte.
I might be barking up the wrong tree, but is it that well, he's confided in him about having an affair with someone anyway, so no.
Well, so you're on the right mark. I would say it's not that he confided in him.
He
That's
had
not
an affair.
But he had
He
an
had
affair.
the
an
crime is the guy
affair.
had an affair. He
Yeah.
had an affair. Okay. He cheated on his wife. And now he's mad at Mr. Brown for telling his wife that he cheated on him. Okay. Look, if I don't cheat, if I don't do that, then Mr. Brown can't tell my wife about it. You guys see that? But we don't look at it that way, do we? We think that Mr. Brown, how could he? I trusted him. He was my friend. It's like, no, man. Stop cheating on your wife. And Mr. Brown isn't going to be able to tell your wife about that you cheated on her. Okay. Now, how about his attention to his wife? What decisions based on self did I make that put me in a position to be hurting Mr. Brown in this scenario? His attention to my wife. Well, am I paying attention to my wife? No, I'm paying attention to my mistress. Okay. Do you think he's being husband number one? No. So this guy, now, is it right? Is it right that Mr. Brown is paying attention to his wife? No, that's clearly wrong. But we're not trying to fix that situation. What we're trying to do is gain some level of understanding and compassion for Mr. Brown and try to have some new way of looking at this situation. Okay. Someone else was paying attention to my wife because I was not, because I was too busy with my mistress. I was not being a good, dutiful husband. Okay. And so that's why these things happen. It was not unprovoked. It was, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Whether it's Mr. Brown or his wife or however you want to look at it, the fact is he was not paying his attention to his wife and therefore someone else stepped in. Okay. Now the last one, Brown may get my job at the office. Okay. Do we think that we were being employee number one? We're being employee number one and Mr. Brown just somehow was going to get awarded our job? No, I'm a drunk alcoholic. And in fact, if you go down, look at my employer. Look at the resentment under my employer. Unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Okay. That's what type of an employee I'm being. So I'm resentful at Mr. Brown for doing this stuff. Okay. But in reality, I've made decisions based on self that put me in this position to be hurt. I stepped on the toes of my fellows and they retaliated, seemingly without provocation, but it says we invariably find. And that means every time, without exception, we invariably find we have made decisions based on self that placed us in a position to be hurt. Okay. So now let's look at Mrs. Jones. Okay, it says she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Okay, what decisions based on self did I make that put her put me in a position to be hurt by her? Okay, well, how about this? How about the fact that I'm out drinking with her husband and destroying her family? Okay, I'm a drunk. He's a drunk. She's got her husband committed for drinking now. Okay. Yeah, guess what? She is going to snub me, okay? Because I'm harming her family with my behavior, okay? She's gossiping. She's gossiping. What do you think she's gossiping about? How about the fact that I'm a drunk and I'm out with her husband drinking and destroying her family, okay? Again, guys, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position to be hurt? Under my employer, he's unreasonable, unjust, he's overbearing. Well, why would he be overbearing? How about because I'm drunk and stealing from him? Okay, in the next line, he threatens to fire me for drinking and padding his expense account. And by the way, there's only one place in the world where I've ever heard people refer to padding the expense account, and that's Alcoholics Anonymous. Anywhere else in the world, it's called theft from an employer. Okay, let's be clear. It's called fucking embezzlement is what it is. Okay, I was padding the expense account. Give me a break, man. You're stealing from your boss and wondering why he's unjust and unreasonable. Okay, but we don't see it that way. We don't see it that way, do we? Nope. Sitting in the treatment center, gosh darn it, my boss is just out to get me. I don't know why. I'm sitting there minding my own business. I'm a darn good employee. Man, I work hard for him. You know, these 10-hour work weeks are killing me, you know? Okay. That's how we need to look at it. Okay. So this is when I look in the past, what decisions based on self in the past did I make that put me in this position? I'm going to give you guys a real world example, one that's not in the book. This is one from my own life, and I always love to share it because it was the first time that I really understood this. And some of you, if you've been to the study before, you've heard me talk about this. This guy, Mike, okay, call him 1, Mike. Why? Call him 2. Well, Mike, we were all at a party together, and Mike was kind of telling jokes. He kind of had the floor, you know, everyone, he was kind of standing up and telling jokes. He was kind of roasting, you know, this guy, that, and she, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, and I'll never forget it. He said, and Kevin Olson, let me tell you about this guy. Guy's a thief. Okay. The guy would steal the fillings out of your teeth if he could. You can't trust him any further than you could throw him. Can you imagine him doing that? How dare he? And I went from normal to rage in a New York second, and I held on to that rage for years until one day I was sitting in a treatment center going through this work. Call him 1, Mike. Yeah, because he embarrassed me. He humiliated me. He exposed me. I felt awful. I was humiliated, embarrassed. Okay. How did it affect me? Did it affect my self-esteem? Yeah, he hurt. Yeah, definitely. Did it affect my emotional security? Yes. Did it affect my financial security? No, not really. Did it affect my physical security? No. It almost impacted his physical security, I can tell you that. But anyway, it impacted my ambition. Yeah, my ambition to go to parties and have friends and be social. Yeah, these people are just going to hurt you anyway. So what's the point? Did it impact my personal relationships? Yep, with everyone in that room. Did it impact my sexual relationships? Well, yeah, probably with some of the women in that room. It did that night anyway, I'll tell you that. Okay. Okay. So then what? Then we go to the prayer. Okay. God, Mike is a sick and suffering man. Please show me how I can be helpful to him. God, save him from being angry. Please help me to show Mike the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. Please give Mike everything I would want for myself to him. Give him health, prosperity, and wellness. Amen. Okay. Say the prayer for Mike. Then look at column 4. Where am I to blame? What decisions based on self did I make that put me in that position to be hurt? In what ways did I step on Mike's toes and he retaliated?
You were a thief.
I was a thief. I was absolutely a thief. Okay. I stole from Mike every chance I got. I stole money from Mike. I stole booze from Mike. I stole drugs from Mike. I absolutely stole from him, but I couldn't see that. I couldn't see that if I didn't steal from him, he wouldn't later in life tell a party full of people that I had stolen from him. I stepped on the toes of our fellows. I stepped on his toes repeatedly, and he retaliated. I thought it was unprovoked. Turns out I put myself in that position. Can you guys understand that? Can you guys see where we're at? Now, look, here's what I want to say. You're doing your step 4, do your best. Do your best to apply this tool to each of the situations in your life and try to take a look at what decisions based on self that I make that put me in this position to be hurt. Do your best to sort it out. I'm going to tell you, you're going to be wrong a lot of the time. Doesn't matter. Get those reps in, try to flex that muscle all you can. In what step do we go through it with another person and let someone else take a look and really point out to us where we're actually to blame? In step 5. That's the point of a step 5. Solitary self-appraisal is insufficient. So if you get through this, don't be like I am, which is like competitive. If I'm going to do a step 4, it's going to be the best step 4 that's ever been written. Okay. It's not possible. Just do your best to write these things out. Try to see a new perspective on these things, and then let your sponsor help you sort it out. Okay. So that's really the most complicated one to really try and understand. And I know some of you, I know Stephanie from San Diego. I remember she's here and she's been confused by step 4 in the past. And I understand, so was I. I hope that this is giving a new perspective on step 4 and what we're trying to do. I know we have to bounce around a little to page 62 and so on, But if I really start to practice this tool, it starts to come naturally. Okay. The other two are much easier to understand. What our book says is that putting out of our minds the wrongdoings of others, we resolutely look for our part. Where was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Okay. Where am I to blame? So what I do when I look in the mirror, number 2, we look in the mirror. Where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? What we're trying to do is to say the thing that I am judging this person for, am I guilty of, or could I even be capable of being guilty of the same thing? Okay. So when we look at Mr. Brown on page 65, we look at Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. Well, gosh, have I ever paid attention to another man's wife? Or could I be capable of doing that? Yes. He told my wife of my mistress. Hey, have I ever tried to tell tales out of school to some other guy's wife to try and get my own way? Or could I be capable of doing that? You know what? I did that exact thing in university. I did that exact thing. I knew that some guy had been cheating on his girl that I wanted to be with, and I told her that he had been doing that so I could get with her. I've done that exact thing, okay? Brown may get my job at the office. Hey, have I ever tried to angle a guy out of his job before, or could I be capable of being guilty of doing that same thing? The answer is yes, okay? When I'm honest with myself, yes, I could be guilty of doing all of those types of things, okay? I have been guilty, or I am capable, certainly, of doing those things, okay? And when I start to look at it that way, I start to build more compassion and understanding for this person, that they are not public enemy number 1. And in fact, we have a lot more in common than I like to admit, okay? The difference, guys, between sympathy, empathy, and compassion is this. Sympathy, I feel sorry for you. There's not a lot of spiritual value in I feel sorry for you. Empathy is I feel what you're feeling. Little bit more spiritual value in that. I can feel what you are feeling. Compassion is we are the same. We are the same. We are not different. And that's why we find compassion beyond our wildest dreams in Alcoholics Anonymous, because we are the same. We suffer from the same problem. And what's more important, as we've learned, we have the same solution. We have a way out upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. Okay? And when I start to look at these people in the mirror and say, you know, I'm guilty of the same thing. Suddenly I'm not, you know, it's not, they're not adversarial anymore. It's not an enemy relationship. It's an understanding relationship. Does that make sense, you guys? So now let's look at Mrs. Jones. She's a nut. She snubbed me. Do I snub people sometimes? She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Do I gossip about people? Yeah, I do. Okay, absolutely. Okay. Let's look at Mike, this guy who embarrassed me in front of a party full of people. Have I ever done anything like that? More times than I care to admit. I did it at my home group level in Alcoholics Anonymous. I did it at Primary Purpose Group 2 Wednesdays ago. Someone was chairing the meeting and I made a joke about them in front of the whole place. The whole place laughed, and that person felt probably this big when Kevin made a joke about them. Why? To make myself the center of attention, to make myself look good, to make myself seem funny. Okay. And I had to make amends, and I had to make amends from the podium to that person. And it was fine. And it's all good now. But I do that kind of thing. Okay. And so I needed to look, and then I had understanding for Mike, like, man, I do that kind of stuff all the time. Okay. So that's when we look in the mirror. You guys with me? Thumbs up if you're getting it. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. You guys got that? Okay. So listen, guys, this last one is the hardest one sometimes to talk about. And we're gonna go just a few minutes over tonight. Thank you for your time. Where am I to blame today with respect to this resentment? And I'm going to tell you what I mean by this. Not every resentment that I have is applicable to this. But not every resentment I had is also applicable to where am I to blame in the past. Okay. For anyone here tonight who suffers from or suffered from or is a survivor of childhood abuse, and there are many of us in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you suffered from any kind of childhood trauma, childhood abuse, if you were ever hurt or victimized by anyone in your life, traumatized by anyone in your life, this is where it goes. Okay. If I was sexually abused by someone, by the way, please don't get confused. The sexual abuse does not go under sex conduct. Sexual abuse goes here. Whoever it was. Okay. Whoever it was that abused us, this is where it goes in column 1. And I'm open to talking about this, guys, because when I came to AA as a survivor of sexual abuse as a child, I thought that I was completely alone. And what's worse, I thought I was unique and that my case was different. And you don't understand. I'm an alcoholic, but I was also victimized as a child. And therefore, my case is different. And that almost killed me. Okay. In that scenario, when I am looking at things like this, I am not looking at, of course, I did nothing as a child to put myself in that position. This is not what we're talking about, okay? I'm going to help you with this right now. If you are on the edge of your seat right now because you struggle with the same thing and you are really curious to know what is the solution here, I will share it with you, okay? And no, there's no mirror. There's no mirror I'm going to look at. I'm not guilty of the same thing that this person did. I was afraid that I would grow up to be something like that. Okay, but that's not the case. There's 2 things that we need to look at here. Number 1, guys, this prayer. This prayer. To pray for those people and to understand, is it safe to say, guys, that someone who would do something like that to us as a child is suffering? Okay. Yes, they're a monster, but could I understand for a moment that their monstrousness was coming from a sense of suffering for themselves? Could I understand that? Could I understand that people that traumatize me or victimize me, could I begin to see them as sick and suffering individuals and then pray for them? Pray for their well-being. And it was not easy. It was not easy to do. And to pray for freedom. And God, please help me to just let this go. Brothers and sisters, one of the most important things I ever learned in all of recovery, I think I talked about this last week. Forgiving those people did not mean that what they did was okay. Forgiving does not mean condoning. Forgiving just means letting go. That's it. I'm just letting it go. Okay. And most of us have this type of stuff that we need to let go. All right. So here's what I needed to look at. I said the prayer and I had to pray for a long time. And incidentally, you know, if you read page 133 in our book, it says God has abundantly supplied the world with psychologists, psychiatrists, and many different types of therapists that we might enjoy healthy minds and bodies. I also want you guys to know that at about 4 years sober, I started to do some trauma therapy around the stuff that I needed to do. Okay. And that was very good for me. But our book says that when the spiritual malady is overcome, then we straighten out mentally and physically. I always wanted to put the therapy first, and then I'll do the spiritual work. Okay. And it didn't work for me. I needed to stay sober first. I needed to get a solid grounding and foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous. I needed to get a sponsor that I trusted and a home group that felt like home. And I needed to get a solid relationship with God. And then and only then did I have the courage and the strength to go and actually do that therapy the way it needed to be done. Because when I was still drinking and using and still sick with alcoholism, I would do what I had always done. I'd book an appointment with a therapist. I'd go once. We talk a little bit about my family of origin. I go the second time, things would start to get a little raw. They'd want to talk about my mother. I'd want to talk about their mother, and I'd leave and I'd never go back. Okay. And then say that therapy didn't work. And I'm here to tell you that when I was 4 years sober, that therapy I did, it was not 1 or 2 quick sessions. It took a long time and it was really hard to do. And God bless you if you've gone through your own or going through it now. Okay, I have a sponsee that's doing therapy right now, and it's very hard. But he knows, he's learned the secret. I had to put AA first and then go do the therapy. You guys with me on that? So, with that said, when I look at these resentments, guys, where am I to blame today? Today, right now, which is to say, guys, if something happened to me when I was a child, I was a victim. 20, 30, 40 years later, if I am still using that resentment as an excuse for my terrible ongoing behavior, I am no longer a victim. I have become a volunteer. And the truth is, guys, I did more damage to myself behind the narrative that I told myself of that stuff over and over and over in my life than the actual abuse ever actually did. I became my own abuser. I became my own victimizer, and it was great because I had this little self-pity, get out of jail free card to explain away everything, because don't you know what happened to me? And God, it was worse when my parents found out what happened to me. Now I had a weapon. I weaponized it. I used it against people. You know what happened. And so my drinking is your fault because you let it happen. And now you have to pay my rent. If something happened to me when I was a kid, I was a victim. And it's a terrible thing. Years later, where am I to blame in that resentment today? Today, right now, in what ways am I using that resentment as a continued justification, rationalization, an excuse to continue doing these terrible things in my life? And it was an automatic get out of jail free card, okay? And it was a trigger for me. At the very least, if I ever needed an excuse to drink, okay, I always had that available. I could always go back to that thing, blaming that thing. And at some point, we have to take responsibility for our lives as adults and begin to do this work. We were not able to take care of ourselves then. I have to take care of myself today. No one else can do it for me. And I do that through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and getting connected to the grace of God that I access through these 12 steps and strong sponsorship and a home group. Okay? Does that make sense, you guys? And I needed to stop blaming these things that happened to me as a child. And what's worse than blaming is I used them. I used them willingly. I loved it. Okay? I loved wrapping myself in the warm blanket of self-pity. Okay? And using this as an excuse for woe is me. All these things have gone wrong in my life and none of it's my fault. It all happened to me when I was a child. I am not here to minimize anyone's trauma. Please do not think that that's what I'm doing. I understand your trauma and I understand that you're hurt. I am not trying to belittle you or what you have been through. What I do know is that the alcoholic mind will transform trauma into something else, something hideous and dangerous and lethal. It's a word that sounds a lot like trauma. The word is drama. Okay? I will transform trauma into drama and self-pity. And I will ride that all the way to jails, institutions, and death. Please, guys, hear me on this. I needed to find freedom from these things. The two ways I did it: prayer and getting real about the fact that I am the one. That situation that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. I am no longer in danger from anyone other than myself. I remember hearing a guy at an AA meeting say one time, Kevin is trying to kill Kevin, and Kevin doesn't even know why. Okay, so please, guys, these are the three things we look at in a step 4. Where am I to blame when I look in the past? Where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? And finally, particularly for childhood trauma, victimized things, times where you were abused, how am I using that today as an excuse for what I'm doing, or more importantly in AA, what I'm not doing? what I'm not doing, what I'm not taking action in Alcoholics Anonymous. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, that's a heavy one. That's a heavy one, guys. That's heavy. Wow. You know, and you know what? Here's the last thing I'm going to say on it. When I first started teaching this, I was really nervous to teach this part of it every time, because I always thought I would have someone react badly and say, how dare you say that I do this? Like, you have no idea. And I'll tell you guys, in 15 years of teaching this, not one time. We all, every alcoholic understands inherently that we do this. We all know it. And as soon as, and when someone pointed it out to me, it was a key of freedom that they gave me, because I couldn't see. Self can't see self. When I'm in my own head, I can't see the truth. When someone from the outside gave me that key of truth, they unlocked me from the bondage of self. And so I hope and pray and wish the same for you. Okay? So that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you. I know we went over time. I love you all very, very much. I hope that you will find this process as transformative as I have found it in my life. Okay? The level of freedom that I have today is hard to express from where I came from. And I love you all very much. And I could not be more honored or pleased to be here and to share this with you. So that said, guys, we're going to end. We'll say the Lord's Prayer. And then